So, when I last read, the Logan children had gotten revenge on the white bus driver and all the children on the bus, and they were on their way home. And so I usually try and back it up a tiny bit, and I do this at home too when I'm reading, just um, back it up and reread what I had already read just to kind of regroup, get back into the story so I know what's going on. Oh, how sweet was well maneuvered revenge! With that thought in mind, we quietly eased away and picked our way through the dense forest toward home. At supper, Mama told Big Ma the Jefferson Davis bus being stuck in the ditch. It's funny, such a wide ditch in one day. I didn't even notice the beginning of it this morning. Did you, children? No, Mum, we chorused. You didn't fall in, did you? We jumped onto the bank when we thought the bus would be coming, said Stacy truthfully. Well, good for you, approved Mama. If that bus hadn't been there when I came along, I'd probably have fallen in myself. The boys and I looked at each other. We hadn't thought about that. How'd you get across, Mama? Stacy asked. Somebody decided to put a board across the washout. They're going to haul that bus out tonight? Big Ma inquired. No, ma'am, said Mama. I heard Mr. Granger telling Ted Grimes, the bus driver, that they won't be able to get it out until the rain stops and dries up a bit. It's just too muddy now. We put our hands over our mouths to hide happy grins. I even made a secret wish that it would rain until Christmas. Mama smiled. You know, I'm glad no one was hurt. Could have been too with such a deep ditch. But I'm also rather glad it happened. Mary! Big Ma exclaimed. Well, I am, Mama said defiantly, smiling smugly to herself and looking very much like a young girl. I really am. Big Ma began to grin. You know something? I am too. Then all of us began to laugh and were deliciously happy. Later that evening, the boys and I sat at the study. Oops, sorry, kids. Later that evening, the boys and I sat at the study table in Mama and Papa's room, attempting to concentrate on our lessons, but none of us could succeed for more than a few minutes without letting out a triumphant giggle. More than once, Mama scolded us, telling us to get down to business. Each time she did, we set off faces into looks of great seriousness, resolved that we'd be adults about the matter and not gloat in our hour of victory. Yet just one glance at each other and we were lost, slumping on the table in helpless, contagious laughter. All right, Mama said finally. I don't know what's going on here, but I suppose I better do something about it or you'll never get any work done. You know that feeling when you can't stop laughing and you're about to get in trouble for it, or you're laughing at an inappropriate time and you just can't stop? That's what the kids are dealing with. It occurred to us that Mama might be preparing to whip us. We shot each other warning glances. But even that thought couldn't dampen our laughter, now uncontrollable, welling up from the pits of our stomachs and forcing streams of laughter tears down our faces. Stacy, holding his sides, turned to the wall in an attempt to bring himself under control. Little man put his head under the table, but Christopher John and I just doubled up and fell upon the floor. Mama took my arm and pulled me up. Over here, Cassie, she said, directing me to a chair next to the fireplace and behind Big Ma, who was ironing our clothes for the next day. I peeped around Big Ma's long skirts and saw Mama guiding Stacy to her own desk. Then back she went for Little Man and, picking him up bodily, set him on a chair beside her rocker. Christopher John she left alone at the study table. Then she gathered all our study materials and brought them to us, along with a look that said she'd tolerate no more of this foolishness. With Big Ma before me, I could see nothing else and grew serious enough to complete my arithmetic assignment. When that was finished, I lingered before opening my reader. Watching Big Ma, she hung up my iron dress, then placed her heavy iron on the small pile of embers burning in a corner of the fireplace, and picked up a second iron already warm in there. She tested the iron with a tap of her finger and put it back again. So this is one of those things that, it just shows the time period. Back then, you didn't just plug in your iron, you had to heat them on a stove, and you had two of them. One so it could be heating while you were ironing with the other. If any of you have ever been to the Wilder farm, um, they they have a stove with one of those little irons on it. So this is just more painting a picture of the setting, and of course, an author needs to be educated on the time period in order to do a good job pre- uh, presenting, showing the setting. While Big Ma waited for the iron to get hot, I could see Mama bending over outspread newspapers, scraping the dried mud off the old field shoes of Papa's, which she wore daily, stuffed with wads of newspaper over her own shoes to protect them from the mud and rain. Little man beside her was deep into his grade reader, his eyebrows furrowed in concentration. Ever since Mama had brought the reader home, with its offensive inside cover no longer visible, Little Man had accepted the book as a necessary tool for passing the first grade, but he took no pride in it. Looking up, he noticed that Big Ma was now preparing to iron his clothes, and he smiled happily. Then his eyes met mine, and silent laughter creased his face. I muffled a giggle, and Mama looked up. "Cassie, you start that up again, and I'm sending you to the kitchen to study," she warned. "Yes'm," I said, settling back in my chair and beginning to read. I certainly didn't want to go to the kitchen. Now that the fire no longer burned in the stove, it was cold in there. The room grew quiet again, except for the earthly humming of Big Ma's rich alto voice and the crackle of the hickory fire and the patter of the rain on the roof. Engrossed in a mystery, I was startled when the comfortable sounds were shattered by three rapid knocks on the door. Rising quickly, Mama went to the door and called, "Who is it?" "It's me, ma'am," came a man's gravely voice. "Joe Avery." Mama opened the door and Mr. Avery stepped into the room. "Why, brother Avery," Mama said, "what are you doing out on a night like this? Come on in, take off your coat and sit by the fire. Stacy, get Mr. Avery a chair." "No, ma'am," said Mr. Avery, looking rather nervously over his shoulder into the night. "I ain't got but a minute." He stepped far enough into the room so that he could close the door, then nodded to the rest of us. "Evening, Miss Caroline. How you tonight?" "Oh, I'll do, I reckon," said Big Ma, still ironing. "How's Miss Fanny?" "She's fine," he said, without dwelling on his wife. "Miss Logan, uh, I come to tell you something important. Mr. Morrison here?" Mama stiffened. "David? You heard something about David?" "Oh, no, ma'am," replied Mr. Avery hastily. "Ain't heard nothing about your husband, ma'am." Mama regarded him quizzically. "It's it's them again. They's riding tonight." Mama, her face pale and frightened, glanced back at Big Ma. Big Ma held her iron in midair. "Uh, children," Mama said, "I think it's your bedtime." "But Mama," we chorused in protest, wanting to stay to hear who was riding. "Hush," Mama said sternly. "I said it's time to go to bed. Now go." Groaning loudly enough to hear our displeasure, but not loudly enough to arouse Mama's anger, we stacked our books upon the study table and started toward the boys' room. "Cassie, I said go to bed. That's not your room." "But Mama, it's cold in there," I pouted. Usually we were allowed to build small fires in the other rooms an hour before bedtime to warm up. "You'll be warm once you're under the covers. Stacy, take the flashlight with you and light the lantern in your room. Cassie, take the lamp from the desk with you." I went back and got the kerosene lamp, then entered my bedroom, leaving the door slightly ajar. "Close that door, Cassie." Now, mind you, Cassie has to be in the room in order for us to know what's going on. She has to either hear it, overhear it, or hear it, second hand through Stacy so that we know what's going on. So clearly the door is probably not going to stay closed, or she's going to put her ear against it or something. I put the lamp on. Immediately the door was closed. I put the lamp on the dresser, then silently slid the latch off the outside door and slipped onto the wet front porch. I crossed to the boys' room. Tapping lightly, I whispered, Hey, let me in. The door creaked open, and I darted in. The room was bathed in darkness. What they say? I asked. Shh, came the answer. I crept to the door leading into Mama's room and huddled beside the boys. The rain softened upon the roof, and we could hear Mama asking, "But why? Why are they riding? What's happened?" "I don't rightly know," said Mr. Avery, "but y'all knows how they is. Anytime they thinks we stepping out of our place, they feels like they gotta stop us. You know what some of 'em done to the berries." He paused, then went on bitterly. "It don't take but a little bit of nothing to set them devilish night men off." "But something must have happened," Big Ma said. "How you know about it?" "Alls I can tell you, Miss Caroline, is what Fanny heard when she was leaving the Grangers this evening. She'd just finished cleaning up the supper dishes when Mr. Granger come home with Mr. Grimes, you know, the white school bus driver, and two other men's." A clap of deafening thunder drowned Mr. Avery's words. Then the rain quickened and the conversation was lost. I grabbed Stacy's arm. "Stacy, they're coming after us." "What?" squeaked Christopher John. "Hush," Stacy said harshly, and "Cassie, let go. That hurts." "Stacy, somebody must have seen us and told on us," I persisted. "No," Stacy replied unconvincingly. "It couldn't be." "Couldn't be!" cried Christopher John in a panic. "What do you mean, couldn't be?" "Stacy," said Little Man excitedly, "what do you think they're going to do to us? Burn us up?" "Nothing," Stacy exclaimed, standing up suddenly. "Now why don't y'all go to bed like y'all supposed to?" We were stunned by his attitude. He sounded like Mama, and I told him so. He collapsed in silence by the door, breathing hard, and although I couldn't see him, I knew his face was drawn and that his eyes had taken on a haggard look. I touched his arm lightly. "Ain't no call to go blaming yourself," I said. "We all done it." "But I got us into it," he said listlessly. "But we all wanted to do it," I comforted. "Not me," denied Christopher John. "All I wanted to do was eat my lunch." "Shh," hissed Little Man. "I can hear him again." "I'd better go tell Mr. Morrison," Mr. Avery was saying. "He out back?" "I'll tell him," said Mama. We could hear the side door open and we scrambled up. "Cassie, get back to your room, quick," Stacy whispered. "They'll probably come check on us now." "What'll we do?" "Nothing now, Cassie. Them men probably won't even come near here." "You really believe that?" asked Christopher John hopefully. "But shouldn't we tell Mama?" I asked. "No, we can't never tell nobody," declared Stacy adamantly. "Now go on. Hurry." Footsteps neared the door. I dashed onto the porch and hastened back to my own room, where I jumped under the bed covers with my clothes still on. Shivering, I pulled the heavy patchwork quilts up to my chin. A few moments later, Big Ma came in, leaving the door to Mama's room open. Knowing that she'd be suspicious of such an early surrender to sleep, I sighed softly and, making sleepy little sounds, turned onto my stomach, careful not to expose my shirt sleeves. Obviously satisfied by my performance, Big Ma tucked the covers more closely around me and smoothed my hair gently. Then she stooped and started fishing for something under the bed. I opened my eyes. Now, what the devil was she looking for down there? While she was searching, I heard Mama approaching and closed my eyes again. "Mama." "Stacy, what are you doing up?" "Let me help." "Help with what?" "Whatever's the matter." Mama was silent a moment and said softly, "Thank you, Stacy, but Big Ma and I can handle it." Wait. Oh man, I don't like it when I do that. Hang on. Go slowly. Papa told me to help you. And you do. More than you know. But right now, you can help me most by going back to bed. It's a school day tomorrow, remember? But Mama, if I need y'all, call. I promise. I heard Stacy walk slowly away, then Mama whispering in the doorway, "Cassie asleep?" "Yeah, honey," Big Ma said. "Go on and sit back down. I'll be out in a minute." Then Big Ma stood up and turned down the wick of the kerosene lamp. As she left the room, my eyes popped open again, and I saw her outlined in the doorway, a rifle in her hands. Then she closed the door, and I was left in the darkness. For long minutes I waited, wide awake, wondering what my next move should be. Finally, deciding that I should again consult with the boys, I swung my legs over the edge of the bed, but immediately had to swing them back up again as Big Ma re-entered the room. She passed the bed and pulled a straight-back chair up to the window, parting the curtains so that the blackness of the night mixed with the blackness of the room. She sat down without a sound. I heard the door to the boys' room open and close, and I knew that Mama had gone in. I waited for the sound of the door opening again, but it did not come. Soon the chill of the cotton sheets beneath me began to fade, and as Big Ma's presence lulled me into a security I did not really feel, I fell asleep. When I awoke, it was still nightly dark. Big Ma, I called. Big Ma, you there? But there was no reply. From the chair by the window, thinking that Big Ma had fallen asleep, I climbed from the bed and felt my way to her chair. She wasn't there. Outside, an owl hooted in the night. Quiet now, except for the drip drop of water falling on the roof. I stood transfixed by the chair, afraid to move. Then I heard a noise on the porch. I couldn't control my trembling. Again the noise, this time close to the door, and it occurred to me that it was probably the boys coming to confer with me. No doubt Mama had left them alone, too. Laughing silently at myself, I hurried onto the porch. Stacy, I whispered. Christopher John. There was a sudden movement near the end of the porch, and I headed toward it, feeling along the wall of the house. Little man, hey, y'all, stop fooling around and answer me. I crept precariously near the edge of the high porch, my eyes attempting to penetrate the blackness of the night. From below, a scratchy bristliness sprang upon me, and I lost my balance and tumbled with a thud onto the muddy flower bed. I lay paralyzed with fear. Then a long, wet tongue licked my face. Jason, Jason, not you. Our hound dog whined his reply. I hugged him and then instantly let him go. Was that you all the time? Look what you gone and done. I fussed, thinking of the mess I was in with mud all over me. Jason whined again, and I got up. I started to climb back onto the porch, but froze as a caravan of headlights appeared suddenly in the east, coming fast along the rain-soaked road like cat eyes in the night. So a caravan of cars is just a group of them traveling together, a large group of cars traveling together, like cat eyes, she said. That means, the yellowing lights when it's really, really dark out. That's a nice simile. Helps. Jason whined loudly, growing skittish as the lights approached. And when they slowed and braked before the house, he slunk beneath the porch. I wanted to follow, but I couldn't. My legs would not move. The lead car swung into the muddy driveway, and a shadowy figure, outlined by headlights of a car behind him, stepped out. The man walked slowly up the drive. I stopped breathing. The driver of the next car got out, waiting. The first man stopped and stared at the house for several long moments as if uncertain whether or not it was a correct destination. Then he shook his head and without a word returned to his car. With a wave of his hand, he sent the other drivers back inside, and in less than a minute, the lead car had backed into the road, its headlights facing the other cars. Each of the cars used the driveway to turn around. Then the caravan sped away as swiftly as it had come, its 7 pairs of rear lights glowing like distant red embers until they were swallowed from view by the Granger forest. Jason began barking now that the danger had passed, but he did not come out. As I reached for the porch to steady myself, there was a sense of quiet movement in the darkness. The moon slid from its dark covers, cloaking the earth in a shadowy white light, and I could see Mr. Morrison clearly, moving silently like a jungle cat from the side of the house to the road, a shotgun in his hand. Feeling sick, I crawled onto the porch and crept trembling toward the door. Once inside the house, I leaned against a latch while waves of sick terror swept over me. Realizing that I must get into bed before Mama or Big Ma came from the other room, I pulled off my muddy clothes, turned them inside out to wipe the mud from my body, and put on my night clothes. Then I climbed into the softness of the bed. I lay very still for a while, not allowing myself to think. But soon, against my will, the vision of ghostly headlights soaked into my mind, and an uncontrollable trembling racked my body. And it remained until the dawn when I fell into a restless sleep. So, night riders, that was a group of white men who went out in the middle of the night to take the law into their own hands and um, lynch people. So it looks like it was a close call because they left. I'm going to stop here.